Hi everybody, Kimberly here, and I fell in love with this stencil from Gina Designs, and I can't wait to show you 7 different ways to use it. Okay, the first way to stencil is a basic, easy one, and that is just inking through your stencil. To hold my stencil and my cardstock in place, I'm using some of the purple tape from ThermoWeb, and I'm really enjoying using that. I like how it doesn't stick permanently. As I'm going to go in and ink my image, I'm going to start using some of this Lucky Clover Green ink from Gina Designs. It's one of the new colors. And I'm going to use a Post-it note to help mask off where I don't want the green color to go. I'm going to very gently with my ink go in and put the ink through the stencil, being mindful of the small stems of the leaves here. The nice thing I love about ink is that you can layer it and add more and more to get a deeper color. To do my flowers, I'm going to start with some of the Coral Reef ink and once again use it on my foam ink applicator. You can see I like to rub it off just a little bit onto a piece of paper first so that I can see how much ink I have. I'm going to make the darker color be the center of the flower, so I'm not going to worry about doing a whole lot of masking for the flower part of this stencil image. And then I'm going to switch over to this lighter orange color. And once again, I'm going to just very carefully ink through the stencil. Because of the way the petals are on this flower, I'm not going to mask. I'm just going to pull the ink applicator through the petal like you can see. And there you can see a beautiful inked through image. To add a little extra definition and a little bit of pop, I'm going to use a real thin black pen, and I'm going to not very carefully outline each part of the image. And as you can see with the finished result, it really makes that stenciled image pop, and it's just a unique look, and I really like it. So I hope you enjoy it when you try it on your next card too. The second technique is a two-tone watercolor technique. I have a full video tutorial on this technique on my channel, so make sure and check that out for more details. What I use is a water brush that already has watercolor in it. And when I pick up a small amount of different color with the tip, I can create this amazing blend of two colors. So I go from the new color to the color that's already in the brush. It creates some really beautiful florals. Using a watercolor brush with the stencil is very easy. The way the water flows, it lets you create a pretty defined outline through your stencil. I'm not letting a ton of water flow through, and as you can see, I'm helping out my stencil a little bit by making sure that where I am applying the brush and the watercolor, I'm holding the stencil down to keep it in place to stop it from having a ton of bleeding. I love this pink and purple color with these flowers. It really adds a unique touch. I did the same thing for the leaves as well, except this time I had a light blue color in my brush and I was picking up a bright green color. I think the technique is really great and adds some really unique interest to an already beautiful image. Technique 3 is a basic color pencil technique. Color pencils are great for coloring and blending. So all I've done is I have simply started by tracing my entire image with color pencils. I used a green color for the leaves and I used a peach color for the flower petals. Once again, I'm holding the finer details of the stencil in place as I draw around it, but really when it comes down to it, you're going to add your own color and your own details later, so don't be too worried about not exactly following the stencil. To finish off this image, I just went in with some color pencils and added layering with color and contrast and a little bit of blending to really make my card pop. The fourth technique is embossing, and embossing with stencils is one of my all-time favorite techniques. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my stencil and a piece of cardstock. Well, one thing you want to keep in mind when laying out your design for your embossing with a stencil is that as you pass this through, if the edge of your stencil is hanging over the edge of your cardstock, you will get that line when you do emboss. So for this card, I'm going to make sure that I move my stencil edges so that they line up with the card edges and my cardstock is not hanging off anywhere. Every machine is going to be different for how you're going to set up your sandwich, so please find a sandwich that works for you. For me, with my Big Shot, I'm going to put on the base plate without another plate down, the stencil, the cardstock, a thick embossing pad, and then I'm going to grab a stack of paper. This is just some basic paper that I have laying around to create a shim. I'll lay that over the top of the mat. You'll have to guess on your shim. I think I have 5 or 6 sheets of thinner weight cardstock there. And I will top with a plate, just one single plate. I'm going to pass it through my machine by turning the handle, and it should have some stiffness to it as it goes through. However, if you are trying to crank it through and it won't go, do not go any farther. Stop and go ahead and remove some of your shim. After you pass your plates through and your paper, you can go ahead and peel your stencil out, and the results are really impressive, and I love how beautiful this looks on this cardstock. Look at the details and look at how beautiful that has turned out. But I want to take it one step further. What I'm going to do is take some of this called wax paste, and this is a gold color wax paste. And I love the smell of this when you open it. It has a very citrusy smell. This paste provides a lot of coverage very quickly. You can apply it with a brush, and it doesn't take very much wax paste at all. I'll apply it to this dark cardstock so that you can see how it looks as you go. It can be very thick and have a very solid coverage. You can see I still have a lot left on my brush to use. But my favorite way to use this is to actually just stick my finger in there. I feel like I have a little bit more control of the amount of color that I put down on my image. Now that we're set to go, we'll use the wax paste, and I'm going to just very carefully rub the wax paste over the raised areas of the image, and you'll see how the image will just pop, and it will also have this beautiful shine of color. After I put my finger in the wax paste, you can see I touched it to a piece of cardstock. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't have a ton of color. When you get a little bit more color, it gets a little bit more intense. Now you can see when I put my finger down, it was very intense, but I'll be able to blend that out easily and make a beautiful finish on this embossed card. And I love the gold finish on this. This paste comes in several different colors, so you can find a ton of different colors to play around with. Stencil is with a metallic paste. This is a paste that you pass through a stencil that has amazing, intense, bright, vivid color. After I've taped my stencil in place, I'm going to go ahead and scoop some of this metallic paste out onto my palette knife. And I like using the back because I can reach a little bit better. It's kind of like having that offset handle for your frosting when you're baking. I'll apply the paste gently through the stencil, making sure that I fill in all the places. It's easier to see on this dark cardstock with the contrasting paste, so you can see exactly where you have enough paste or do not have enough paste. Go ahead and just keep applying it all the way through the stencil and all the way to the bottom of the image as much as you want, smoothing it out as you go to make it even. After just a minute or so, go ahead and peel the stencil up and make sure that you clean all your tools right away so that you can continue to happily reuse your stencil. Those results are pretty amazing. And now for another way to use some paste. This time I'm going to use some modeling paste. One thing I wanted to mention when you're using a stencil is don't forget to turn it around and change its position, because then you can get some really different looks. I'm going to be using some light modeling paste through my stencil. Once again, I'll use that palette knife and I will use the back. This stuff totally feels like buttercream frosting. Scoop some out and begin to spread it over your image through your stencil. You'll see that your image is covered with this product, with this modeling paste, because it will fill in the openings in the stencil, and you'll see where you need to apply more or less. I really like to try to smooth mine out as much as possible to make my image as even as possible, but you could leave it bumpy and textured, depends on the look that you want. Within just a minute or so, I've gone ahead and peeled up my stencil. Make sure that you go and clean off your stencil right away. Now I'm really going to make this image pop by adding some ink. Now, normally I don't use this many Post-it notes. This is kind of crazy, but I wanted to have this covered up all the way for video so that I could quickly and easily show you how I use a Post-it note to mask spots off. I'm going to grab some Coral REEF ink, and once again, I'm going to use my ink applicator here, my foam ink applicator, to apply ink to my image. And I just want to make sure that I have plenty of ink loaded into my foam applicator. I find if I don't have enough ink, like when it's brand new, it doesn't cover as well and it isn't as even. So make sure that you really load these up when you first start using them. I'm gently applying the ink right to the modeling paste. I've set it aside to dry for a good couple hours before applying this ink, so keep that in mind when you're going to try this out. I'm going to switch to the next color, and once again, I'm just going to very carefully apply the ink over the top of this dry paste, which has now become hard and solid. I love the way it blends out. And let's grab some green, and now you can see how I normally mask things off with just a couple edges of Post-it notes to hold things in place and allow me to apply the ink. Don't forget that you can apply more layers of ink to get deeper and more intense colors or to add shadow and shading. Now for our final technique, foiling, and I'm going to do it with transfer gel. What I've started with is some of these clear designer toner sheets from Decofoil, and these can go through your laminator or through your Mink machine. I'm going to apply my transfer gel through my stencil onto this clear sheet. It's a really interesting result and very cool. So once again, I'm using that palette knife to apply this product through the stencil. This product is by far the thinnest product that you're going to apply through the stencil, and it's going to be very translucent as you apply it. It will keep a white tone, but it's a little more difficult to see as you're applying it through. You may want to consider using a colored background instead of the white like I did here. Once I've filled in all my spots, then I can go ahead and set this aside to dry. And you'll be able to see here as I set this down what it looks like. I have missed a couple spots, but I can go back and patch those up. Several hours later, this is dry and it should be clear, so you can see it, but it should be completely translucent. If it's still white, let it dry longer. Over the top of this, I'm going to put some foil. I've cut it to size and I've placed it in my folder that can go through my laminating machine. Please don't force it through your laminator, just let it grab and pass through. And here's the awesome reveal. When you peel the foil away, it reveals the beautiful image underneath that you pass through your stencil. I think this look is absolutely incredible and it is so elegant and shiny. I absolutely love it. And there you have it, 7 ways to use one stencil to make amazing cards. If you like this video, make sure you click subscribe below. And if you're curious about any of the products that I used in the video, please check out the description below the video. Thanks and have fun using your stencils.